Welcome to another in our series of Kehillat Israel podcasts. This is a recording of Rabbi Amy Bernstein's weekly Friday morning Torah study.
Behar-Bechukotai is a double parsha. When we have a leap year and we stick in 4 more Shabbatot, we divide this and read them separately because you need 4 more parshiot when you stick in an extra month. So we uncouple the double parshiot and read those separately. But this year we are reading it together, Behar-Bechukotai. So this is an explication of some of the laws that will pertain to the Israelites when they reach the land of Israel. And of course, we know that these are written later and retrojected onto the Israelites in the desert. That these are laws that were understood to be the way the Israelites were supposed to live and build their society. There continues to be argument about whether this was ever truly implemented. Just like the sacrifices that we read about, there's scholarly arguments that say there's no way if you bring a ram and a bull and a whatever, there's no way they could have sustained that kind of animal population. So there's an argument there that the sacrifices never happened the way we get them described. They're aspirational. And there's the same argument about this, that this would not have worked as a system. There would have been no way to really implement it. And it was aspirational. It's how they were supposed to prioritize their relationship to land. And I want us to stay in that modality if we can, rather than does this work? What does exactly this mean? What does exactly that mean? Which, I love to do. I really do. But I would like to stay in this idea of whether it happened or not, whether it's specifically this or specifically that. I would like us to just stay in this mode of what if this is the way we are commanded to think about our relationship to property and to land and to ownership. Because I think that's the key of all of this that we're going to look at. It's about relationship and about the ideology of ownership. And we'll look a little bit at how Yitz Greenberg understands it. And if we have time, look at another piece that I found that I really liked this year for us. Okay. Behar begins, Vayikra Adonai al Moshe Behar Sinai lemor. God speaks to Moshe at Sinai, saying, speak to the people Israel and say to them, when you come to the land that I'm giving to y'all, and you have when you enter the land that I'm giving to y'all, you shall cause the land to have a Shabbat to Yud-He Vav-He. 6 years you shall sow your field, and 6 years you may prune your vineyard and gather in the field. But in the 7th year, the land shall have a Sabbath of complete rest, a Sabbath of God. You shall not sow your field or prune your vineyard. You shall not reap the aftergrowth of your harvest or gather the grapes of your untrimmed vines. It shall be a year of complete rest for the land. But you may eat whatever the land during its Sabbath will produce. You, your male and female slaves, the hired and bound laborers who live with you, your cattle and the beasts in your land may eat all its yield. You shall count off 7 weeks of years, 7 times 7 years, so that the period of 7 weeks of years gives you a total of 49 years. Then you shall sound the horn loud, the shofar, in the 7th month. On the 10th day of the month, the day of atonement, you shall have the horn sounded throughout your land. And you shall hallow the 50th, so you will make holy the 50th year. You shall set it aside. You shall proclaim release throughout the land, right? This is Dror. So this is a popular Hebrew name. I feel sorry for any boys who are named Dror and have to leave Israel because nobody can say their name. You shall proclaim release throughout the land for all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you. Each of you shall return to your holding, and each of you shall return to your family. That 50th year shall be a jubilee for you. This is Yovel. You shall not sow, neither shall you reap the aftergrowth of your harvest or your untrimmed vines. For it is Yovel. It shall be Kodesh to you. You may only eat the growth direct from the field In this year of Yovel, each of you shall return to your holding. When you sell property to your neighbor or buy any from your neighbor, you shall not wrong one another. In buying from your neighbor, you shall deduct only for the number of years since the Yovel, and in selling to you, you shall be charged only for the remaining crop years. Meaning, what? More or less, depending on where we are in the cycle, if you're going to buy land. And you cannot lie about it, and you can't screw it up, right? I am Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. You shall observe my laws and faithfully keep my rules, that you may live upon the land in security. The land shall yield its fruit, and you shall eat your fill, and you shall live upon it in security. And should you ask, what are we to eat in the 7th year, if we may neither sow nor gather in our crops? I will ordain my blessing for you in the 6th year, so that it shall yield a crop sufficient for 3 years. When you sow in the 8th year, because you're skipping the 7th year, you will still be eating old grain of that crop, meaning you won't even need the fruit of the 8th year. You will be eating the old until the 9th year, until its crops come in. But the land must not be sold beyond reclaim, for the land is mine. You are but strangers, resident with me. Actually, it's toshavim. Ki gerim, you are foreigners, strangers, the toshavim, and sojourners with me, resident aliens. Throughout the land that you hold, you must provide for the redemption of the land. What does that mean? If one of your kin is in straits and has to sell part of a holding, the nearest redeemer shall come and redeem what that relative has sold. Regarding anyone who has no one to be redeemer, but prospers and acquires enough to redeem with, meaning, I have land, I do really well, right? This is agricultural, laws, because this was an agricultural society. Anyone who has no one that they need to be redeemer for, but they're really wealthy because of the land, the year since its sale shall be computed, and the difference shall be refunded to the party to whom it was sold, so that the seller returns to their holding. Meaning, wealth does not stay in the hands of one family forever. If the seller lacks sufficient means to recover it, what was sold shall remain with the purchaser until the Jubilee. In the Jubilee year it shall be released, so that they return to their holding. I want to go to not the walled city. I know, Pam hates this when I do this. Do not lend your money at advance interest, nor give your food at accrued interest. I am the Eternal. I am Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to give you the land of Canaan to be your God. If your kin under you continue in straits and must be given over to you, meaning indentured servitude, do not subject them to the treatment of a slave. Remaining with you as a hired or bound laborer, they shall serve with you only until the Jubilee year. Then they, along with any children, shall be free of your authority. They shall go back to their family and return to the ancestral holding. For they are my servants, whom I freed from the land of Egypt. They may not give themselves over in servitude. You shall not rule over them ruthlessly. You shall fear your God. Okay, I want to drop down to Leviticus 20. This is more about redeeming. This is about kin and who is commanded to redeem. So family, blood kin are commanded to redeem their kin if they fall into poverty and are sold into indentured servitude. Here's what I want. You shall not make idols for yourselves or set up yourselves carved images or pillars or place figured stones in your land to worship. For I am Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, I am your God. You shall keep my Sabbaths and venerate my sanctuary, mine. Ani Adonai, I am Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. If you follow my laws and faithfully observe my commandments, I will grant your rains in their season, so that the earth shall yield its produce and the trees of the field their fruit. Your threshing shall overtake the vintage, and your vintage shall overtake the sowing. You shall eat your fill of bread and dwell securely in your land. I will grant peace in the land, and you shall lie down untroubled by anyone. I will give the land respite from vicious beasts, and no sword shall cross your land. You shall give chase to your enemies, and they shall fall before you. I will look with you upon favor and make you fertile and multiply you, and I will maintain my covenant with you. This goes on, and then, of course, it goes to talk about the opposite, like what will happen if you don't do all this. Okay. So again, without the particulars of how this happens, who transfers what, who's the redeemer, how many years left on the theory here is that nobody owns the land. God owns the land. And Art Green goes through the Hasidic tradition where they say, why does this whole thing begin with God spoke to Moshe at Sinai saying, the land shall have a sabbatical? And he makes the connection that it's because it's telling us that all of the land is filled with God's presence. That has always been. These understandings of how we interact with the land is how we come to recognize that reality. That reality has been in place since Bereshit. Since God says, the Vayehi, 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 let there be, let there be, let there be. The Hasidic tradition says God's presence has filled everything since God poured God's self into it all to make it all happen anyway. All of these laws are about us recognizing that by how we behave in relationship to the land and in relationship to our kin who have to change status sometimes because of their material prosperity or their material lack. None of it is permanent. None of it is earned, really. It's all God's. And we get to use it and interact with it, but we are not to try to claim it as eternally ours. There's only one eternal, and that's with a capital E. Okay. Bert, you want to say something here?
I just have a question. When you were talking about they shall not cut the corners of the fields, is the verb, or is that related at all to you shouldn't cut the corner of your beard for men? Is it related at all to a human being, or is it like a completely other verb?
I don't know the verb.
That makes two of us.
Well, if you look on Sefaria, you can look up that verb and see if it's the same one used. But what is the same as peah?
Yeah.
Right? Peah is the corners, and that is also the corner of your face.
Mm-hmm.
Right, which are the sideburns.
Sideburns.
Which is why they're called payos. Right? The tav is not got a dagesh, so in the Yiddishized pronunciation, it's not peot, it's payos. Mm-hmm. But that's why it's called payos. Okay.
Payach is leaving the corner of the field on, right?
Pe'ah is
Pe'ah is, but when they talk about the corner of the field and leaving that for the poor, that's the word that they use.
Yes.
I just was relating kind of the human being to I'm not sure how it relates to the idea of the fields, and both actually belong to God.
Well, I think in that sense, it's very Jewish that the land belongs to God, so therefore you have commandments about how you're supposed to interact with it, and the same with your body. Judaism understands that your body doesn't belong to you. Your body was given to you by God, which is why it has to be returned to the earth the way it was given to you, because it doesn't belong to you. So it makes perfect sense that if you have to leave the corners of the field, right, to God's people, God's poor, God is also saying, and you don't get to control what you do completely with your body because it's mine, right? Like that's my body. And I'm telling you, you're going to have a sign all the time that is so. And the sign is you're not going to cut here. that parallelism makes complete sense to me. All right, Betsy?
So if your body is not your own, because it belongs to God, then
I knew this was coming. Okay, go ahead.
What?
I just knew there was going to be a follow-up to if your body belongs to God and it's not yours.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting topic, I think. Then is that why suicide would not be
correct?
Would be not okay in
correct.
Our tradition?
Yes, you do not get to decide.
You can't decide to end your body to.
No,
yeah.
And that is it's just the same thing with euthanasia, and the same thing around hospice care. There's a whole tension in Orthodoxy around hospice. And when do you stop trying to preserve life?
Yeah.
Because there's such, as we've talked about with Yitz Greenberg, there's such an incredible value placed on life. And, he goes so far as to say all of it is about affirming life in an existence where there is death all around us, not just literal death, but death in life. Disconnection from life is
prohibited.
How you move away from holiness, according to Yitz Greenberg.
Yeah. But there's no qualifications. It's like it has nothing to do with the quality of the life that you're preserving. It's
correct.
Just life.
So there have become arguments, there are arguments now within the halachic world about what constitutes a life.
Mm-hmm.
And some argue from the definition of life, like if there's no brain activity, the person's not living a life, and therefore, but I mean, it's a huge set of arguments in the medical ethics world of halacha. Okay. Did I see another hand?
My hand went up and down. It just seems hypocritical to me to say that it's wrong to leave life and death in God's hands. Because if your life depends on this huge medical intervention, you're not leaving your life in God's hands. You're leaving it in the hands of someone else.
We don't leave our life in God's hands. We leave it in the hands of the medical practitioners.
Or we choose not to.
That's where the argument is, because Torah says, no, you don't. I mean, Torah. The rabbis argue in halacha based on Torah, you don't get to say, no, I don't want treatment. You have to pursue life. I'm not saying that's correct. I'm saying that's the impulse in the tradition.
Yeah.
And hence, all the stuff around suicide being so taboo, it's because of this incredible emphasis on life that the tradition has. Again, I'm not. And by the way, I just want to be very clear about this: that if a woman is pregnant and someone shoves her and the baby dies, it's not murder. I want to be very clear about this, right? So it is not murder. The fetus is considered part of her body. Because some people want to make a jump. If your body doesn't belong to you, blah, 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 blah. The fetus is part of her body. All right, Bert?
That is Torah, not necessarily. I know it's your opinion, but just so everybody knows, you're quoting Torah.
I am quoting Torah. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, you're
according to Torah, it's not murder. If the fetus dies, it's not murder.
As I understand it, the conservative movement, I'm not sure about reform and reconstructionist, says you can let someone die. You don't have to save life at all accounts, but you can't actively make them die.
That's one position.
Yeah, as I say, I was saying in conservative, you can't.
Yeah, right. So there are different positions.
We had an experience the other day. We had to take a medical exam for this senior living place that we're moving into, and we had to go through all of these questions with our doctor. What about this? What if you stop breathing? There's some kind of a red form that you have to fill out, and it was all those questions, and it got scary, and we weren't quite sure what to answer.
Yeah. No, it's And it's really important to think those things through and to have someone you trust ready to make those decisions on your behalf. And, it's why we're going to have an ethical will writing, 8 sessions, and why, because it's really important to think through and talk through with your family. It's the most loving thing you can do for them, is talk through all of that and have it ready to go so they don't have to actually make the decision. It's already written and legal. Jim?
Amy, if the principles of our bodies belong to God, then what is our spirits? Is that a part of God?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. It's a spark, it's a little flame off the big flame. Victoria?
Rabbi, I have a question in this area. I wonder what Maimonides says. I'm illiterate. I've honored and revered that dude before I was Jewish, but I'm just wondering what commentary he has from a physician's point of view about assisting dying or allowing people from a physician's point of view.
Yeah. So you can look that up. I'm not sure what Rambam says about that. I don't know.
Fair enough. Thank you. Yeah.
But if you want to check, I'm just going to always try to give you all the tools, not just tell you, look, the tool is to go to Sefaria, find a verse that you want to look at, and then you can click on that verse. It opens a side menu. One of the things on the side menu is commentary. Click on commentary and you can go down to Rambam.
Beautiful.
And you can look at Rambam on that verse. You can also go to AI and just ask it, what does Maimonides say about allowing a patient to die? And AI will bring you, psukim. Want to look a little at Yitz Greenberg. Judaism's utopian vision of universal equality. Very short, pithy title, huh? Okay. All right. So Yitz Greenberg is suggesting that we have in this covenantal system as relates to property and to people's status, like indentured servitude and all of those kinds of things. He says he believes that this is a marriage of utopian values, like all should be equal, with hard-headed actions and concrete steps in the real world, right, that we live in. And that partnering of a utopian vision with a hard-headed realistic approach, meaning the covenant, allows Judaism to make dialectical moves and use the best policies from both general political approaches, both the utopian and the practical. This hybrid approach also has positioned Judaism to avoid the pathological runaway revolutionary movements that have raised humanity's hopes and dashed them for the past 2 centuries. I would argue for the past 5 millennia. Here, I want to focus on the utopian vision. This will help readers grasp the fullness of the Jewish hope for world repair. The Torah recognizes private property and upholds it by prohibiting stealing, unfair exchanges, or seizing others' possessions by cheating or moving boundaries without payment. But private property and marketplace economics inevitably lead to inequality and the creation of a class of permanently poor. The Torah fights this by prohibiting taking interest on loans and by calling on family to help individuals avoid falling into poverty. When individuals are driven by economic pressures to sell their land, the Torah instructs families and redeemers to help them regain their land and capacity to produce income. Most of all, the Torah reveals its commitment to equality by shaping the 7th year as a sabbatical year. The number 7 represents the Torah's ideal of the perfect, the whole, the complete. The 7th day every week is Shabbat. 6 days a week we tolerate and participate in the flawed daily regimen where there is equality and inequality, rich and poor, justice and injustice, satiety and deprivation. On the seventh day, the Shabbat, we put aside all the compromises and injustice. All people, be they free or slaves, are released from work. All competition and striving to get ahead is suspended. People live the day as a foretaste of the Messianic era, when all people will have what they need, without war or conflict. People live in harmony with God, with nature, and with each other. So Greenberg is suggesting Torah holds two visions, both the utopian vision, which we are to practice and have a taste of every 7 days. In that sense, it's radical. Who else has equality of rest for slaves and beasts of burden? No other culture that we know of. So that's pretty radical if you think about it. 1 day a week, you are to live the messianic reality so that you never lose the taste of it, the possibility. So you can never see your slave as completely other, or your, oxen as just beasts of burden for your use. Because 1 day out of 7, you interact with them as equal to you, free, entitled to being treated like you treat yourself. Does that make sense? And then every seventh year, same deal. And every 7 times 7 year, big time. Huge reset. Living the messianic era. No, it's not a reality yet. No. But we're supposed to get a taste of it every 7 days, every 7 years, and every set of 7 years, every 7 years, whatever that is, so that we continue to experience it regularly enough that the system does not permanently oppress some people, and so that we continue to understand that we are supposed to work for a time when this is not necessary. Torah is doing both, says Greenberg. The way Torah mitigates between what's real, private property, the marketplace, the economic system of the marketplace, the failure of crops, the failure and disease of flocks, the way Torah deals with that is covenant. Moving what is one step closer to how it should be, practically dealing with the reality of poverty and inequity, but trying to move the system always towards more equity and protection of those who are the least fortunate for whatever reasons. Okay? I really like that. I feel like we are so misguided in our American society right now. So misguided according to how Torah understands our relationship to land, meaning material wealth and surplus, and who has access to it. I was just listening to something on the radio about Bitcoin, and I was so upset I had to turn it off. Like I couldn't even finish the piece. I was so upset and angry because it's set up so that the people who have access to making all the money off Bitcoin, and again, I don't understand it because I didn't listen to the whole thing. It's way over my head. It's above my pay grade. But what I did get from the piece is that it's rigged. That the people who will profit from Bitcoin are a certain kind of people who have access to money to put into, it's like, it's not set up for everybody to be able to benefit equally from that system. And we know that. If you look at compounded interest, who's making all the money? People who have money. to make interest on the money. And so we have a permanent underclass in this country while we're spending billions going to war in Iran. We have children going to bed hungry who don't have access to education with Head Start or anything else, who don't have access to daycare so their parents can work, and who are sleeping in their cars. If you look at Torah and you take Yitz's and other people's, other brilliant, scholars, take their analysis of this stuff in Torah, we are so off the mark. It's not funny. A permanent underclass, growing inequity between rich and poor, a growing permanent underclass, a shrinking middle class, and now we're going to have a healthcare system that I asked Jeffrey Rush, who I was living with, Dr. Rush. He was saying something about the insurance industry and access to whatever. And I said, so Jeff, what's going to happen for people who don't have insurance, as they gut Medicaid and Medicare and whatever? And he said, Amy, it is very clear with rising costs and limiting access, what is going to happen in this country is an absolute two-tiered system, which is access to medical care and very little access to medical care. There's going to be two classes in this country: people who have access and people who don't. And that we seem to be accepting that. We're living with that. We're approving legislation that's gutting people's access to the very thing we just said was most important according to Jewish understandings of life and law and all of it, which is access to life. Well, that's not just not dying. That's the ability to live. That's the ability to live with dignity. That's the ability to live well enough that you can work and your kids can be taken care of so you can work. And not just that you have a heartbeat and are breathing, but that you can live a life. And we are I know I'm on a soapbox. I know it. But as I read this stuff and the commentary on it this week and listened, as I'm driving wherever, I'm like, it makes my head explode. How anti-Torah philosophy our civilization is right now, America 2026. Bert, I'll let someone else talk now.
Well, it's wonderful that leaders like yourself are speaking up about that, and do not apologize for being on a soapbox. I find it great and also disturbing that the only major religious leader in the world who seems to be speaking out about this and about Torah is the Pope.
The Pope.
And I wonder, where are the Jewish religious leaders? Where are the people from our tradition? I'm not a great fan of the Pope's theology, but I have to say that he sounds, in a lot of that cases, like a liberal Jew in that particular case. And the part of the issue, and I guess this goes all the way back. I mean, it's a conflict that's existed since, quote, the beginning of time. And that is between those people who want to, as you said at the beginning, walk in the ways of God, which in this case we think are laid out in the Torah. Other people have other testaments that they believe, but nevertheless walk in the ways of God, or just walk in the ways of themselves. Anyhow, I'll get off the soapbox.
Yeah, I'm with you, Bert. I'm with you. I'm preaching to the choir here. And that's what Torah knows, by the way. Torah knows that's our proclivity. Mm-hmm. Torah knows that human nature is to get as much as we can and live as comfortably as we can, having the illusion of as much control as possible by having wealth. Wealth is really about having, right, the sense of security and control over your destiny. I think. And having lost all that material wealth that I had acquired, I certainly got in touch with that, right? The vulnerability. Anyway, Torah knows that's the human impulse and is saying, like you just said so beautifully, so you have a choice, human. You can live into your proclivities or you can walk in the ways of God. And if you do walk in the ways of God, you follow these laws that are not natural to you, that don't come naturally. And if you do that, you will live a life of blessing. You will live a life aware of the God in all of it, the holiness of existence, and you will live a meaningful, God-filled life. Rachel?
I did want to answer one thing that Bert said in defense of Jewish leadership in this country. Organizations like Trua, Rabbis for Human Rights, they have been out in the streets in en masse. I may not always agree with everything that, one or another organization does, but they really have been. I don't think that they get, certainly no one has, there's no central figure in Judaism the way that there is in Catholicism. And I also think that the media has a role to play here. If the person that everyone is talking about in the Jewish community is Ezra Klein, thank you, New York Times, and not a rabbi, then it's, then I think we can answer our own question, which is the Jewish leadership in this country and in the rest of the world has been a little preoccupied since October 7th, 2023, with something that has been kind of more front and center, and that is, frankly, anti-Semitism. So I don't, right or wrong, excuse or not, I think that has absolutely been, preoccupying or occupying a whole lot of mental energy and space.
So I want to add to what Rachel's saying and say the other thing that's happened is because of the focus on Israel and Zionism and anti-Semitism and our relationship to all of that, the polarization within the Jewish community has paralyzed us in terms of addressing the social, economic, justice issues that we used to be united around. And I'm not saying we're not united around those issues. We are. But we're so divided on the other stuff that we don't talk to each other and work with each other on the issues of economic justice and all those things. To Rachel's point, we're not putting that as a priority. Also, that, like you said, the media doesn't focus on it. And the Jews are so busy, being polarized, just like the Democratic Party, thank you very much, polarized that we are completely inept. We cannot act, and we are not having influence in the ways that we could if we got our act together. Susan?
One thing that very frustrates me is the people that a great mass of the people that you're talking about, who are losing their health care, are losing food for their children, are the very people who are voting for the party that is causing all of that. So in a way, they have chosen to disenfranchise themselves by their action at the polls.
So, that's the sad irony, right?
It is a sad irony.
Some of us see happening. It's my opinion. I'm not saying it's reality, but my opinion is that those people were lied to and manipulated into voting for someone who was only interested in profiting.
And yet they chose to be lied to and manipulated.
On some level. On another level, I feel like charismatic leaders have been doing this from the beginning of time. And it's true. Somebody's got noise going on in the background. I'm not sure. I don't know if it's you, Susan. But Hitler was elected, right? People are manipulated, particularly people who are in dire straits are easily manipulated because they want someone to blame. Because if they can do that, then there's somebody who can fix it. if you say, well, it's the system and it's going to take a lot of to fix it, nobody wants to hear that. Who's struggling to put food on the table? Nobody. They want to hear, here's the problem. It's the Democrats. It's the blah, 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 and all your money is going to that, and that's why your eggs are so expensive. They want to hear that so that they have a strong man who can fix it. And they believe that. And then they're screwed, of course.
But when it doesn't work, they don't open their eyes.
Yeah. Well, let's hope let's see in the midterms. Rachel?
I do want to, because I take very seriously everything that, I'm hearing here. And I have at times kind of thought the way that, Susan, that you're thinking too. But I want to be... statistically, most of those people actually don't even go to the polls.
Yeah.
So with like 30% on average, when you only have in many instances, like when you if we really, really look at like the breakdown of who actually shows up to vote, in presidential elections, it's a little higher, but in the midterms, it's extremely low. But at best, we're doing like 30%, of eligible voter turnout, in a good year. And so the overwhelming majority of those people who are actually being affected by these policies, they gave up a long time ago, and they're not showing up.
That's a good point.
So I'm not really sure that it's fair. I'm personally uncomfortable with something like.
I think both are true. I think he is manipulated, and that whole wing has manipulated a lot of people, and a lot of people, like you said, don't vote, and they don't, and then the access to voting is being manipulated again.
And yes, and there is, right, and we have a lot of problems with actually providing fair access at the polls.
Yes,
for sure.
100%. 100%. All right. Bert, then Betsy, then Jim.
Real quick, if it's okay, I'd like to move away from politics for a second, and get back to Torah. Not that Torah is not about politics.
I was going to say, do not set those against each other.
Right. But true. Just on a personal level, and we were relating sabbatical year, and God owns the land, and God owns our bodies. That each one of us has a decision as to what, who are we cheering for? What are we doing? What is our life about? What are the values that we as individuals hold? How do we express them in terms of our relationships with other people? And to the extent we have them, political relationships? None of us is capable of changing all these things we were talking about by ourselves, or even with some other people. But we have decisions to make every day. And you were talking about walking in God's ways, and it gets back to whose ways are you going to walk in? What is your decision in your life about whose ways you're going to walk in? Or to put it another way, what song are you going to sing? Which goes back to the Song of the Sea. Right. When the people say, we're going to sing a song of God. Are you singing a song of God, or are you singing a song of Mammon or whatever?
Well, they sing to God. Let's just be clear. Shira Zeladonai, they sing to God. But I agree.
Aziva Zamrat Yah, you are my strength and my song.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. I was talking about that
Love
verse.
It when Torah scholars quote Torah back at me. Love that. Makes me very proud. So I am going to Betsy now.
Before Bert said, let's move away from politics, I raised my hand but it's also related to what you just said, Bert, about in whose ways are you going to walk? Because just in general, in the political spectrum, I'm really struggling because my Jewish soul tells me, to be for the downtrodden and help those who are in need and who have less. But then I'm finding that then I end up aligning myself with people who are so focused on being doing anything they can against Israel that they've lost their way. I feel like they've lost their way. And just as an example, I posted something on Facebook about fighting the anti-Israel the boycott of Israeli products at Trader Joe's. So I went out and purposely bought a bunch of all the Israeli products that Trader Joe's carries, and I thank the manager for continuing to carry Israeli products. And I got such pushback from my liberal friends on Facebook about, how, thank you for pointing this out. Now I'll no longer buy Bombas. Like, it backfired, and because they're very focused on doing anything they can to hurt Israel, and it's a struggle. Where do I fit in? Because I'm not going to align myself with the right, but right. I used to be more of a left winger, and I feel like there's no place for me anymore there.
Right. And this is what I was talking about. That the polarization on the left is really tying our hands in terms of being able to impact things the way we would want to vis-a-vis the social justice and economic. Yeah. All right, Jim, then Pam, then Alex.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. I just hope, simply put, it's unfortunate that we have to go through the times that we live in, but maybe they serve a purpose into waking people up. It's like I stated in the chat, it's like so many people are looking for, to blame, and they want the quick fix. And, I hope that people become, that there's, they look to false idols, that they look, go inward if they have the capacity to do that. That's what I've learned in my own human journey. I'll leave it like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Pam?
Getting back to the text in Bechukotai, we didn't discuss the curses, which I'm glad they're so terrible, but I am curious why you think God increases them sevenfold. It keeps increasing the curses so much more than the blessings, in my opinion. So I just wanted your take on that.
Several scholars, including Greenberg, say it's made very clear that we are in control of how bad it can get, and that if it goes bad, it's going to go really bad. Right? So blessing, you'll have all you need, your crops will be great. It's kind of easy to imagine you have all you need, you have excess. You don't need a lot of words for that. But the words for how bad it can go, right? Torah's making it clear all the ways it's going to go really, really bad. And I think we don't do that enough. We don't talk catastrophe enough. In terms of climate change, I was listening to something else about, the gyre that's twice Texas in the middle of the ocean is contributing to climate change. We knew it was contributing to blah, 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 blah. But now that those particles are in the air, they did a new research thing, and those particles, rather than reflecting sunlight, are absorbing sunlight. So it's increasing. So we don't talk about it enough. The curses that are coming or that are happening and what they're going to mean for us when we talk about the implications of our actions and the systems that we put in place or don't put in place, meaning politically and economically. Because for Torah, there's no separation between religion and politics. And on some level, I agree, right? Like the voting booth is very much informed for me how I vote by how I understand Torah. I guess what I'm trying to say is Torah seems to think it's effective to harp on how horrible it can go. That's where I'll leave it. Helene.
Yeah, well, it seems to be we're heading in that direction as we speak. And we should take what Torah has said about curses. The guardrails seem to have come off, and there seems to be no end to the entropy, whether it's climate change or polarization or economic inequality. I mean, we seem that we're already heading down that rabbit hole as we speak.
Yep. Yep. All right. Well, we can't leave it there. All right. I'm not going to spend much longer. I know we're at time. So let's just want to look a little bit at Art Green, who, remember, ties. Why is this Sinai and the land having a rest? Why is that tied? And he says, he's talking about the Ma'amarot, the 10, what we call commandments. They're not 10 commandments. We know that. It's Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 utterances. That's literally the translation in Hebrew, the 10 utterances. These Ma'amarot are the 10 times, God, I love this, that God says, let there be, in the opening chapter of Bereshit. I love that. What are the 10 utterances? The 10 commandments, if you will, the 10 sayings. It's not the ones we usually point to. For the Hasidic tradition, the 10 utterances are the 10 times that God says, let there be, in the opening chapters of Bereshit. I love that. Of course, there's only 9, but they read Bereshit itself as the 10th. These utterances live forever. They are the underlying structure of reality, waiting to be discovered. They are present in the earth as they are in the heavens. At Sinai, these 10 utterances are repeated in the form of the 10 dibrot, the 10 commandments. These constitute a set of keys for revealing a presence that is already there. They do this by converting the passive sense of presence into a set of imperatives. Follow this path. It will lead you to a life in which God's presence is revealed right where you are, living on earth. The sabbatical rule takes Shabbat, the most distinctive practice of Jewish living, and applies it to the land itself. What better way to teach that the whole earth, the actual earth, is filled with God's presence, with God's kavod, with God's glory. So this amazing parallel of the 10 times, Bereshit being one of them, so it's really actually 9, the 10 times God says, let there be, that's the original 10 utterances. That's what Aseret HaDibrot actually refers to. Then at Sinai, we get 10 utterances, 10 commandments or statements or whatever, that are the ways the Israelites are given to realize that God is present in everything that exists. Did it make sense? Does that make sense? I love that. So we have Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 utterances are actually creation. When God speaks the world into being, Sinai is the way God gives us direction about how we as human beings can realize that and bring it forward. And that is halacha, that is practice, what we do. So it is our job, according to Reconstructionist Judaism, it is our job to bring about the Messianic era. We do not believe in a Messiah or a God who's going to come fix it all on Judgment Day. Rather, Kaplan taught about Yemei HaMashiach, the days of the Messiah, the Messianic era, the Messianic age. So does Yitz Greenberg talk that way, meaning it's up to us to create that. So let's do our best to continue studying, learning, engaging, voting, researching, preaching, protesting, doing all the things that we need to do to actualize the dibrot from Bereshit into the ones of Sinai. Shabbat Shalom.
You've been listening to Rabbi Amy Bernstein's Friday morning Torah study from Kehillat Israel in Pacific Palisades, California. For more information, go to our website, www.ourki.org.